Welcome to the Free Library of Philadelphia Online. My name is Jason Freeman. I'm a producer and editor here in the Free Library's Author Events Office, and I'm pleased to be here to introduce tonight's guest, Richard Thompson. Referred to by Rolling Stone as one of rock's MVPs since the mid-60s, Richard Thompson is a beloved singer, songwriter, and guitarist. His prolific body of work includes 18 solo studio albums, 8 seminal duet albums with his former wife, Linda Thompson, and 5 albums with Fairport Convention, the band he formed at the age of 18 in his native London. He's been a guest musician on albums by artists ranging from Crowded House to Loudon Wainwright III, who these gentlemen were discussing before we came on. And his songs have been covered by Elvis Costello, Bonnie Raitt, REM, and too many others to name. He is here tonight with his new book, Beeswing, Losing My Way and Finding My Voice, 1967 to 1975. A reflection on the spirit of a special cultural era, a candid look at life on the road and in the studio, and an examination of the story of Thompson's emergence as a major presence on the British folk rock scene. It offers an inside look at this artist's early output and musical relationships. One review claims that, like a great Richard Thompson solo, this title contains surprise, beauty, delight, and a voice like no other. His autobiography is as welcome as it is long overdue. Tonight, Richard will be in conversation with Wesley Stace, a longtime friend of the Free Library and the Author Events program, as well as a writer who has appeared several times on our stage in his own right. He is the author of 4 novels, and under both his name and the name John Wesley Harding, he has released multitudes of albums across an array of genres. He has also taught writing and songwriting at Swarthmore, Princeton, and Fairleigh Dickinson universities. We're in for a great evening, so let's get right to it. Richard, Wes, thank you so much, and take it away.
Thank you very much. And welcome to virtual, oh, this is the card that's gone up. That means that I think we're just going to talk away because I think we're ready to go. So Richard, I will put myself forward because and say that I really was thrilled to read your memoir. I thought it was a wonderful book in many ways. Please just kick it off by telling us, when did you have the idea to do it? Were you a diary keeper? Was the idea given to you? What was the process of writing it? Was it interviews? And I know Scott Timberg, sadly no longer with us, helped you write it. Tell us about the story of how the book came to be at all.
Okay, the process. Well, my friend Scott Timberg, a wonderful journalist and author, who I knew very well when I was living in Los Angeles. And Scott would bug me from time to time and say, you really need to write a book. You need to write about this time period. You know, you were there, you were a fly on the wall. You saw all these people at the time. And I said, well, no, thank you, Scott. I really don't want to do that. So, but eventually he took me around after a couple of years. And we started the process as a kind of an interview thing, you know, where he'd interview me and then he'd write it up afterwards. But I felt very dissatisfied with that process because I felt that whatever my voice is, it wasn't really coming across. So I said, look, I'll write it, and then you come in at the end. You can help me shape it and edit it. But sadly, Scott died before the book was finished, so his contribution was smaller than it should have been, but it wouldn't have happened without Scott.
Well, it's very interesting actually, because you have some very nice capsule portraits of, you know, people, shall we say, who've fallen by the wayside as others have survived, including, of course, Nick Drake, John Martin, Viv Stanchel. There's some really nice little character portraits in there. And of course, one of the people who ends up being fallen by the wayside is your collaborator on the book. Yeah. Well, it's when did that happen during the process?
Yeah, it happened during the process, which was a shock, and it derailed me for a while. It kind of slowed the book down for a while, but I think as a tribute to Scott, we you know, with the help of my editors, we managed to get through the process. Did I keep a diary? I didn't keep a diary. I wish I'd kept a diary. Yeah. That would have made life so much easier. My goodness me. So, you know, I tended to write a bit kind of scattergun style, you know, just writing anecdotes. and you know, gluing them together in what I thought was chronological order, and then realizing that that was completely wrong. And I had to go to some of these kind of websites that have all the Fairport Convention, you know, tour dates from 1967, or claim they do,
Right.
and you know, try to piece stuff together. And you know, when I asked some old colleagues what they remembered, generally they remembered nothing. It was very disturbing. You know, their memory was even more selective than mine was. So that there's huge gaps in the collective knowledge there. But you know, writing the anecdotal stuff was wonderful and easy, and I loved it. Trying to put it into a structure, into a chronological structure, I found much harder. And also having these people called editors who take you to task about things like chronology and you know, spelling and and meaning. You know, what do you mean by that? As a songwriter, you never have to answer those questions. You know, you can get away with murder as a songwriter, but as a prose writer, it's much more exacting.
So when you say editors, was Scott originally kind of your editor, as it were, and putting the book together? And then when he passed away, it was handed to other people who took how far you got and helped you finish it? Or was he more of a collaborator on it, whom editors were doing the work on?
I think at the very beginning he was a collaborator, but I was uncomfortable with that process.
Right.
So then I was writing it. He was going to come in at the end. From time to time, he'd say, "We need this chapter by so and so," you know. But really, you know, his role was going to be more at the latter stages of the book. You know, every publishing house will assign you an editor. So I had a UK editor and a US editor.
Right. I know. That's the worst.
You know the whole thing, yeah.
Oh, it's the worst.
Who were wonderful, and you know, much as I get frustrated during the process, they were invariably right about everything, and so I
Yes,
have
I know.
superior knowledge that they were absolutely wonderful, and I love them dearly.
When you were when you were looking back on those bits of your career, I literally want to know, were you doing it on a computer, or were you writing them in longhand, or what was your preferred way to sit and do this?
Computer.
Right.
The main problem is that I can't read my own writing. And you know, it's just you know, it's like being a doctor. You know, you write out too many prescriptions, and your writing just goes to the dogs. And I think you know, years of scribbling down songs has reduced me to this absolute, you know, Egyptian hieroglyph. Basically, it's unreadable. So if I can, yeah, get stuff down on computer, I'm fluent enough just about as a typist to go at a reasonable speed, and it's a much quicker process for me. And it's a bit more Ernest Hemingway as well, you know, to be sort of, you know, at the keyboard, as it were.
Did you have any books that I've read in an interview with you recently, perhaps in The Guardian, I think, that you know, and I think it's a good point, that some of those doorstop books written by people get kind of a bit boring. I mean, the way memoirs are written nowadays, mostly, it is a vogue to write the years of ascendancy and then to cut off before the years of plateau, when the memories are more or less the same. And I think Patti Smith's book was a very good one for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I interviewed Moby for the Free Library, and that, you know, the Moby book, which is an excellent book, ends up with him just listening to the demos for the album Play, which is, you know, so it's the whole story up to the success. Did you particularly feel, I mean, I know there is that thing where those memories at the beginning are so much more vivid,
yes,
than the later memories, in the same sense that you can remember almost a gig you did in 1967 in a funny way. You can kind of remember it more than a gig you did 2 weeks ago, right?
Well, absolutely. I think you know, when you're young, you know, we were starting out really as teenagers. Everything is for the first time, and it's fresh, and in many ways extraordinary. You know, to play in Bradford University was somehow amazing at the age of 18. Since then it's rather become mundane, and you play, Scranton for the 35th time. What exactly are you going to say about that experience? Unless someone dies in the audience or something, unless there's a murder, there's not a lot to talk about. So and I'm always amazed actually that the period that I chose is so compressed. So much happened.
Amazing, yes.
Which is incredible. I mean, 1969, where we put out 3 albums. I don't know how we did that. I just do not understand. But we were just working all the time. There weren't a lot of days off. It's just work, work, work. But we loved it, and we didn't need days off. But we had the energy to keep going. And I read the Keith Richard doorstop, and I read the Pete Townsend doorstop and the Paul McCartney doorstop. And there's a lot of truth in what you say, that basically about 2/3 of the way through things do plateau, and it gets to be all the award shows and the accolades and stuff, and you think, well, this isn't very interesting. I'll read something else. So I wanted to avoid that anyway.
Well, I think the reader is more impressed, not more impressed, that's a silly word, but more intrigued and entertained by the specific memories than they are by the more general, and then we did this show, and then there was a Grammy, and then we played with Bob Dylan, and then, you know what I mean? But I also particularly loved, and I'm just going to recall a couple of things from the top of my head. There's that incredible, I mean, there are some, Fairport was a band forged by tragedies in an odd way, wasn't it? I mean, like the way that Legion Leaf, so, which is the cornerstone of the English folk rock genre. And, it's the cornerstone. It is the text of that stuff. And I mean, I kind of know this from having read other books about Fairport, but that comes directly out of a tragic thing that happened. Firstly, tell us about the thing, and then let's go on talking about it.
Okay, well, Fairport had a road accident in 1969, in the middle of a very busy year, and that killed our drummer. It killed my girlfriend as well. And we were all beaten up, injured, but I think deeper than that, we were traumatized. And in those days, you didn't send people to the therapist. You just said, well, stiff upper lip, carry on, come on, chaps, we can do this, we can get through this. So there wasn't enough grieving and mourning, and so stuff that people pay much more attention to these days.
Yes.
And I think as a result of that, we really were shell-shocked for a very long time. And maybe again, this is a sort of a wartime legacy, that you came back from World War I, World War II, and picked up your life and got on with it. You didn't ask for sympathy, but people were so damaged from the 2 world wars, and likewise we were damaged from the accident. And I think it took us years to recover and to even think straight. I don't think we were thinking straight for a long time. But we didn't want to play the repertoire that we played with Martin.
Right.
We drew a line and said, that's in the past. We're going to go forwards. And now is a good time to throw ourselves into a project. And the project we've been talking about is doing an album exclusively of British traditional music played in a rock style, but played with electric instruments and drums. And realizing that we needed to throw ourselves into something, we needed a distraction. And this was a wonderful distraction. That this really was a totally absorbing exercise. And we spent the summer at this lovely rectory in Hampshire, very isolated, but it seemed like the sun shone every day, and we had a very good work regimen going, and we worked out these arrangements of these very old songs. In some cases, a song like Sir Patrick Spens, the song could be 400 years old. The events in the song could be 700 years old, 800 years old. And we're wedding this with contemporary instruments and music styles to create this kind of new hybrid that we thought would be something that we could excel at, first of all, something that would mean a lot to the audience, because it would be about their heritage and their culture, and something that was unique to Fairport. So something that you know, we weren't being slavish imitators of Muddy Waters or something,
Yes.
or of you know, Merle Haggard, where we're trying to be original on our own terms.
Well, and in a sense, Fairport, before then, though you had written your own songs, were also very well known. And in fact, your only hit at that point, it, you know, had been a cover version, and a rather left field French language cover version of a Bob Dylan song. But nonetheless, and of course, Legion Leaf was Fairport's first, and well, I mean, I suppose if you make a genre, it's the greatest contribution to that genre because you invented it.
Yeah, and it's the first real album of that genre. I mean, on the previous album, we did a song called A Sailor's Life, which was a kind of a kicking down of the barn doors,
Yes.
and revealing a new world on the other side. You know, from a peak in Darien, you know, there's this new landscape appearing, and so that kind of showed us some possibilities. And the rest of my life has been really exploring those possibilities. I mean, I still write in a way that's very influenced by British tradition, and that's the kind of genre that I want to be in. And it all started back in 1969.
Silent upon a peak in Darien, Connecticut, I presume you're
Darien,
referring
Connecticut, yes.
Do and A Sailor's Life, just to put it in perspective, I think is the first time technically that drums had ever been used on a traditional English folk song, on a recording at least.
Yeah, on a recording for sure, pretty much. My cousin Alan always used to say that he invented folk rock because he was in a band in the kind of late 50s, early 60s. And it was like a Shadows instrumental band, but that they used to back an accordion player, and so their set would be, you know, half rock and roll and half Scottish dance music. So he kind of he claimed he invented it, but I'm not so sure. Anyway.
Well, in a sense, I suppose Lonnie Donegan kind of invented it in England, but it was all American songs, except when he was doing vaudeville and music hall songs.
Well, Lonnie Donegan almost invented a lot of things. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, he was recording Arthur Big Boy Crudup at about the same time as Elvis Presley. I mean, you know, it was that close, and he certainly started skiffle and everything that went with that.
And so this is a big moment of moving forward, and it is in the wake of this terrible tragedy where you know, your girlfriend of the time of a few weeks, right, and your drummer of till then with the band, they died. And there's this is why I asked the question. There's the beautiful image that blew my mind a little when you say, you know, you're crawling across, I hate to even bring it up, it's so personal, but you've written it in your book, so I feel I can, you know, and you're crawling across the ground and she's dying. Your girlfriend is dying on the ground by the side of a motorway, and you say something like, you know, it was though she was trying to remember someone's name and she had it on the tip of her tongue. And it was the way you phrased that particular thing. It so reminded me of one of your lyrics, which is one of the reasons that we love you as a singer-songwriter. And it was just such a terrific, poignant and brilliant memory of that moment, and so intimate. It must have been very moving for you to remember those things.
It was very, very difficult, and you know, it's not something that I think about every day. Obviously, you know, it's stuff that happened, and you kind of, you know, put that tragedy to one side and you get on with your life. But writing the book, I really had to go back and try to describe that really just as it happened. I mean, really, I was just trying to be as honest as I could and remember everything that I could. And there are times when I was blacked out, you know, I was concussed, I wasn't remembering very clearly. There were whole days I missed in, you know, after the accident. I don't know what, you know, where I was. I think I was just concussed, really. So I was really just trying to be honest and to pay respect to those who passed, and hopefully it'll give something Jeannie's family as well.
Right.
If they get to read the book, they'll understand perhaps a bit more about what happened to her, because they don't think they ever really knew.
Right, right. Was she? This is a funny old question, because you mentioned Phil Oakes in the book. There's a rather
Mhm.
good theme where you go to a party at his house, and I'm particularly into Phil Oakes. Is it true that he was a cousin of hers?
Apparently, yes. I mean, I didn't know at the time. I had no idea.
Right.
And I don't think Jeannie ever said anything to that to that extent. But apparently, yes.
Um, then another image that really hit home to me from the book, a much more a much less intimate one, is your description of Fairport as a band on the ascent, as if they're going up a mountain together, but everybody's looking at the top rather than looking at each other, as it were, or trying to, like a band of individuals looking at the peak of the mountain where they're going. And that struck me, there's not really a question here, but it struck me as such a brilliant image of almost every band I've ever seen or been involved in at the beginning.
Yeah, well, I think I also said that we were roped together like mountaineers.
Roped together, that's the image.
In a band, you
Yes.
really are. You live cheek by jowl. It's like being in the army, actually, being in a band. Really, the guys in your barracks who endlessly irritate you and drive you crazy and make fun of you and play practical jokes on each other. But when it comes to the battle, you'll die for these people. It's that strange thing where they're sometimes your worst friends, but they're also your best friends. And time has proven that Fairport was a wonderful family of friends and musicians, that we always got on with each other.
Well,
But we never hired horrible people. We never hired the junkies and the egomaniacs to be in the band. So I mean, after Fairport, I worked with Sandy, I worked with Ian. I've always played at the Fairport Festival.
yeah.
I might be playing it this year again. It's just one of those things where whatever bonds we had, they were lifetime bonds. And it's it's like the Cropley Festival is like the old army reunion. So it's like where you have your old army mates round, for a drink.
Well, and also, I mean, there's just to fill in people who don't know or haven't read the book. There's also a second amazing automotive accident in the Fairport history, which didn't kill anybody, or indeed did it? No, maybe the driver of the car.
Killed the driver. He was killed instantly. Yeah.
So you were living. Just fill us in on this one. But you were living in a pub, above a pub, and this one, rather than causing Legion Leaf, rather than actually perhaps caused your exit from the band, did it?
I wouldn't say it had really anything to do. I think I might have either left the band or been about to leave the band anyway at that point. But I was away for the weekend. I was down in London doing a session at the weekend, and I came home, and the street was a pile of rubble, and the place we lived, this converted pub that we lived in, had a huge hole in the front of it, and a big articulated truck sticking out of it, and it had gone into Swab's bedroom, and so Swab had moved his bed the day before into the corner of the room, so that he could put these antiques he just bought in the space, and the lorry came in, smashed the antiques to matchwood. There wasn't a single brick that landed on Swab's bed. It was like completely unscathed. But imagine waking up with a huge truck coming through the wall of your room. I mean, it's a horrifying image. He was very shaken. I mean, obviously, by that stuff.
And you were
my room was upstairs, so my room was ceased to exist as well.
Any other telling car accidents since then, or is that the end of them?
Hopefully that's the end. Yeah, I can't think of anything else. That's a lifetime's worth, I think.
But the story of Fairport, I mean, and I think that this is one of the very nice things about your book, is that, and I, as a music fan, one hears about the bad things, and the bad things are sometimes treated with a little too much relish in the narrative, if I can put it this way, that kind of makes up a Q or a Mojo article about the story of a band, you know. So, and so I'll just go straight to, you know, after the band, you were together with the wonderful Linda Thompson, one of the great voices of female folk rock too. And, you know, and there was that horrible tour that you went on when you were breaking up. And as I was reading the book, knowing that and knowing that that was called the Tour from Hell in almost every article one reads about, I was like, oh, this is going to be weird when we get to that bit, because the whole story of, and anyway, this is a long way of saying, I really loved the way that you were able to surround the less happy stories with the fact that wounds are still being healed. There are still healing wounds. That means that not everything can be dealt with here. I thought it was a very lovely and honest way to deal with those things, because obviously you still have a family and exes and children, and those people have to deal with I mean, we're not all Loudon Wainwright. We can't all just call it like it is the whole time.
No, I mean, Loudon is particularly confessional as a songwriter anyway. Well, you know, as you say, I mean, you know, it's a family situation. Linda and I had 3 kids, you know, 2 of which are you know, wonderful musicians. And after, you know, a very difficult breakup, we now get on great. I mean, the last 15 odd years, you know, we've been the best of friends, and that's a wonderful thing. And I think our kids, you know, see that, and they're happy about that. And you know, you kind of have to I don't know. I suppose you have to kind of ameliorate things a little bit when you're writing about something like that, something personal in that way. I think someone else can write the Tour from Hell book. I'm not particularly interested in doing that one. Nick Hornby was going to do a film of it, but I think he went off the idea. That would have been interesting. Who's going to find me?
Too hellish. Do you think, is there a period of your life, because obviously the book somewhat ends as your solo career is beginning? Do you think there's a period of your solo career, those albums, because, you know, we, your fans, love the Fairport Convention record, we love the Raitt and Linda Thompson albums, we love so many of yours. Do you think there's a period of that solo career that was a particularly exciting period to you, that you could imagine writing a memoir chapter about? Not a whole book, just something that was really fascinating to you, a developmental leap that you took after that period?
Yeah, I mean, that would be fairly easy to write something short. You know, the reason I stopped in 75 was I thought 76 to 80, you know, weren't that interesting for me. I don't think we made very good records, and I didn't want to skip over that in any sense to get to, you know, the juicier early 80s. So,
Right.
I thought, well, I'll stop here for now. If there's another book, you know, I can start further down the road or something. You know, I mean, you know, early solo career was interesting there because it was kind of a struggle. You know, coming off a divorce, being really short of money, having to work a lot, having to do long US tours, like 2-month tours, mostly solo, to keep the costs down, and then doing a long succession of band tours where we're, you know, not very glamorously traveling, you know, in a club wagon, and they're doing it the hard way. For fairly small fees, and you know, that was really hard work, and probably we were young enough that we could put up with the discomfort of it. But it's been a very slow, steady kind of ascent, really, as a solo artist, and it's gratifying that my audience still seems to be getting bigger. You know, as some are dying off, there are younger ones coming along to take their place. It's a terrible way to put it. So, you know, that's a gratifying thing. And you know, if I really focused in on different albums or something, I could probably say a lot about what I was going through at various times, or what kind of transformations were happening for me. But you know, it's been a long time as a solo career. I mean, it's been since the 80s. It's like 40 years.
Well, it's longer than any other part of the career.
Exactly, yeah. And you know, but you know, compared to 1969, where I could write like a lot about 1969.
Yeah.
You know, how much can I write about 40 years worth of music and make it interesting and make it kind of hang together?
Yes. Do you there are a number, this is a good one, there are a number of fairly surreal dreams in your book.
Yes.
One of which involves Jesus revealing himself to you in a train.
Yes. Yes.
These felt somewhat relegated to the back of the book to me.
Well, there was an argument about this. I wanted them in the main body of the story. You know, so if I dream about Keith Richards, it's after I've seen Keith Richards. If I dream about Joni Mitchell, it's after I've just seen Joni Mitchell. But my editors, who are usually right about everything, thought it interrupted the flow of the narrative too much. So that they became asterisks and appendices.
So was that the same in the English book and the American book?
Yes, the same. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I think it's a mistake, Richard.
Well, there you go. Well, I'll tell him you said so. But you know, the reason I wanted the dreams included was because you know, the 60s was not linear. You know, it wasn't this happened and then this happened and this happened. It was like chaotic.
Right.
You know, and is that's because of drink or drugs or whatever. You know, the world was a very surreal place for me, and I almost, you know, drifted in and out of reality all the time. And my dream life was very, very sharp at that time, which is probably due to the drugs or something, you know. You know, these dreams are very vivid still from that time period. And I might have cleaned up a bit of dialogue here and there, but apart from that, I mean, they're pretty much as they happened. And yeah, I mean, the dream about Jesus, I've had a couple of people like offended already by that dream. But it's not literally Jesus. It's you know, it's my fantasy about some tramp on a train. You know, it's about my spiritual searching for something.
Also, it's your dream. If you had it, it can't be offensive.
I'm not responsible, you know, for the content in many ways. Yeah. But I thought it was bizarre enough and interesting enough as a kind of a metaphor for, you know, someone looking for a spiritual goal, but being caught up in their own earthly drama, really, which is about me, really,
right?
You know.
Well, I mean, you know, one of the things is there's a nice bit when you talk about Sandy Denny kind of, and how a lot of the witch season, Joe Boyd's acts, kind of success of a major level eluded them. And that was harder for some people to deal with than others. Well, of course, the interesting thing about you is no one, and we needn't be modest about this, no one need delude themselves that you're not one of the greatest English guitar players, regardless of genre, and you've been around making music for years, but you are not, nor ever have been, a top 20 artist. And I wanted to ask, there's a couple of questions pertinent to that. The first one is, I love the fact in the book that we get these portraits of Nick Drake and John Martin and Viv Stanshall. Sure, one might expect to find those, but also because of you and your stature, you're also in, and where you find yourself in the world of show business and commerce, you're also interested in Ida Presti, Snooks Eaglin, and these other people who I didn't necessarily expect to be reading about. And it seemed a fantastic way, in a sense, not to read too much into it, but that you could pay debt to the people who are less recognized in the world of, you know, the people who've influenced and interested you who are less famous.
I suppose so. Well, you know, you know, myself and the other guys in Fairport always cast a very wide net in terms of what we listen to. And, you know, growing up in London was fantastic because you could see so much live music from such a wide range. So we go to folk clubs and you could see, you know, the Reverend Gary Davis, or you could see Bert Jansch, you could see the Watersons, you know. You could go to a jazz club, you know, you could see Ornette Coleman, you could see Common Hawkins, you know. You can see survivors from the beginning of jazz, and you can see Albert Ayler, who was at the other end of jazz.
Yeah.
You can see classical music. You see almost any kind of classical music you wanted to, and all the rock bands we were playing with. You know, we always cast a very wide net, and if you do that, then sometimes your influences become a little stranger. You know, they're not so linear. So Ida Presti, you know, she wasn't Segovia, but for me, she had so much soul. I love the soul, the emotion.
Tell us about her. American listeners tonight might not be familiar.
Like Ida Presti, she was married to another guitar player called Alessandro Lagoya. They were both French, and if you like, they concentrated on playing guitar duets, and they're probably unsurpassed as a guitar duet. I can't think of anyone better. You know, Bream Williams maybe come close, but for me, like the emotional intensity and purity of Ida Presti's playing is just extraordinary. And then you come to someone like Snooks Eaglin. If you don't know Snooks Eaglin, he's from New Orleans. He's a kind of a finger-style guitarist. He's almost like a kind of an R&B Chet Atkins almost. You know, he's this finger style where he can play all the way from standards and ballads up to blues. Just, I mean, extraordinary, you know, technique, and a wonderful musician. And my sister's boyfriend loaned me this Snooks Eaglin EP. And it was another light bulb. It's like this revelation of here's what you can do as a finger-style guitarist, and it just shook me to the core. I thought it was just amazing. And I got to see him, you know, in later years when I went to the, you know, New Orleans Jazz Festival. I saw him a couple of times. Wonderful musician. I think I met him once as well. He was blind as well.
And the book is full of fantastic things. I mean, do you think? Oh, I had such a good question right on the tip of my tongue then, which was, no, I'm going to go somewhere else. Do you, because I can't remember that one. It was such a good one. It was so pertinent to what we were just talking about as well. And it led on from it, but I can't remember. Do you think that your more harrowing songs, you are known as a poet, if I may say this, of love and loss in a quite desolate landscape sometimes. It's the reason people love you. No, but they also love you because, if I may say this too, you're a bit of an all-round entertainer. You have some very funny songs and you have some great covers. You know how to balance it in a live show. Is there a particular format of playing now that you are most comfortable with? Because I've seen you in so many, I've seen you in so many different formats. And I think, solo, of course, with the John Zorn and the Denny Thompson band, I've seen you so many over the years. What would be, if you were going to give a lovely recitation of your favorite songs of yours in all their big world, what would be your favorite format to play that in?
Well, it would probably be a show of two halves, if you like. I mean, which I've done from time to time, where I open the show solo acoustic. I'm my own support act, so you get that that feeling in the room of being a soloist and having the audience's attention, and people can focus in on the music. And then do a second half where it's a bit more bombastic, where you're playing a bit louder with the band, and you can stretch out a bit more on guitar, that kind of thing, and you can play the other songs, the songs that aren't so dependent on a quiet room, if you like. Well,
so it's a bit Dylan, Albert Hall, 1966. That's what you're after, a bit of acoustic section, then electric section.
Exactly. Well, without the controversy necessarily, without the Judas.
You don't want to be booed.
Yeah,
it's probably happened. One of my first memories of not really of seeing you, but of you on the television, particularly, was on an old grey whistle test around the time, perhaps, of Hand of Kindness or something. I'm not sure. And John Hyatt, was on it too, and it was kind of about guitar players. And I remember you being quite. Do you remember that one?
Vaguely.
Yeah,
I remember being on with John. Yeah.
And yeah, it was that one, and kind of you were quite secretive in that when asked by whoever the host was about the sound of your guitar. And it was because it was one of the first times I ever saw you interviewed. I remember having that as an impression of you as someone who was quite cagey about the way you get your sound or whatever is I didn't find the book to be in any way cagey about either guitar playing technique or guitar playing sounds. Did you kind of let your hair down for the book, or is there, are you not that person and I had that impression of? Are there secrets? Are there secrets?
There are secrets, but it's all in the execution, really. I mean, in the book, I wanted the book to be really about music and focused on music, which includes, guitar technique, guitar tone, what you look for in a guitar sound, that kind of thing. I'm remembering that old Grey Whistle Test program now better, and I felt really put on the spot, to tell you the truth.
You seemed it. You seemed it at that moment.
But because we kind of vaguely discussed what was going to happen before the show, and then it kind of threw me, and it seemed kind of like I was doing like circus tricks or something.
Yes.
It was very uncomfortable for me to do that.
Oh.
Because it just seemed the wrong context in a show like that, to be kind of showing people how you do this and how you do that, and I thought, you shouldn't be asking me those questions.
Well, also, you were probably there to promote a new record and play a couple of songs acoustically, which was the point of the show. And that was probably a bit of a hijacked question looking back. But at the time, I was 17, and I was very, like, oh, he won't talk about that. You know how that is.
So I'm not always that cagey, I hope.
No, but in the book, you don't seem to be at all. You talk totally freely about, I mean, things that, as a guitar player, things that surprised and delighted me about technique and about guitars and their sounds and what you try to go for. I remember one time we spoke ages ago. I can't remember the context, but we were talking about. I'd asked you something, and you said, "I'm getting a lot of interesting acoustic guitar sounds at the moment in the studio." Is that something that keeps you alive, trying to make it all sound a bit different? Because it seemed to me that when you were making the albums with Mitchell Froom, there was an attempt to kind of deconstruct, as it were, the very basics of the thing that you do to make it interesting and be alive for you.
I think I've always liked to make records fairly quickly, going right back to Fairport, where, we didn't dwell too long in the studio, and having Joe Boyd as a producer meant that we were always going for a naturalistic sound, which over the years has proved to be a benefit, because then it doesn't sound so dated. We're not flanging and phasing and doing a Phil Spector or anything to the music, and so early solo career, I was kind of doing the same thing. I was trying to keep it unpolished, to not put the strings on it and smooth it out. And with Mitchell, we were trying to do the same thing in a different way, where we were trying to make it sound garage, or garage for your American listeners. I can't say garage, I have to say garage, very English. To try and make it kind of earthy and funky, but we were trying to achieve it in different ways, by as you say, kind of deconstructing things, by deconstructing the drum kit into kind of cheap things that you hit, that kind of thing, making the guitar sound nastier, getting more of a room sound, all kind of tricks that Mitchell and the engineer Chad Blake would come up with, and I thought it was a lot of fun at the time, and I really enjoyed it. Some people find those records too mannered, and I think sometimes they probably were, but on the whole, I enjoyed the experience. But not something I would continue to do now, maybe. I mean, the last album I did, the 13 Rivers album, we're kind of doing a similar thing. We're making it sound a bit garagey, to me, to my ears.
Well, and also, I mean, I'm in the same game, as it were, and
Yeah.
everybody knows that there are the fans, and they're real bona fide fans who would really rather you just played every song on the acoustic guitar. But you, as a musician and as somebody in, a larger commercial sphere, owe it not only to your muse, but also to those people, and also the people who like you sounding a little bit different, to do the very best you can for every record. Because the fact is, you can always go out and play the songs solo acoustic, and they will probably get to hear that anyway. But there remains, doesn't there, always the urge to have it be heard by as many people as possible.
Yeah, I think absolutely true. And I have people who only want to hear me play acoustic. I have people who only want to hear me play electric.
Yeah.
So sometimes it is good to do both in a concert, and try to get some level of satisfaction for the audience. On every record, you should be striving to do things differently. On every song, you should be striving to do a different kind of song. Because
Yes.
if you're just repeating yourself, that's no good. You have to really, that is death. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So you have to keep trying to move forward. And if you do repeat yourself, then maybe you can just call it your style.
Yeah, well,
Establishing your style.
well, yes, that's true. But also, commerce and reviews make everything seem like this new album of yours, is the only thing that's ever happened, because it has to be all pinpointed at this moment. But the fact is, that album might be the lead on to the next one, or indeed the sequel to the last one, because it is a big river that, you've been dabbling your toe in a river of tradition and originality for many, many years now. And, or somebody like Bob Dylan has been doing the same thing.
Yeah. Well, at some point you do have to have a style, and not be a dilettante, and not be picking a bit from here and a bit from there, a bit from there. Much as I love David Bowie, I feel that he's very all over the place. So sometimes too much so that I can't locate his emotional center. But personally, I try not to do that. I try to be a bit more consistent in style, but still try to be innovative. Speaking of critics, I think reviews tend to review not this record, but the record before.
Oh, that's so true.
Yeah, so they kind of figured out the record before, so that they're still on that one, but before they go to this one.
And the record we're going to move on to questions right after this. The record I always use, the thing I always use as an example of that exact thing is actually, funnily enough, David Bowie. He brought that absolutely sensational album out that I can't remember what it's called. And then when the next one, and everybody gave it terrible reviews. Was it called Reality? I'm sure it was. And then the next one came out, and everybody gave that one amazing reviews, and the album was awful, because they finally caught up to the fact that the last one was good. Anyway, we shouldn't talk about David Bowie, because everybody, Richard Thompson, wants to ask you questions.
And about my relationship with David Bowie.
You slept with him, didn't you? I heard.
That's not well known. Not well known.
Okay, here we go. So many. This is from Mark Breslauer. Please, everybody, put in your questions, and I'm going to look through them. And for the next 15 minutes, I'm going to ask them of Richard Thompson before we let him go for the evening. So many artists have covered your songs, including John Wesley Harding, who you're talking. No, nobody says that. Are there any covers that are particular favorites of yours?
Yes, but you might not have heard of the artists. Well, let me say, I think my favorite cover of all time is of the Great Valerio by a band called Swan Arcade, which was a three-piece kind of a folk vocal trio. They used to do a lot of shanties, that kind of thing. A guy called Dave Brady and his wife Heather, and the other guy's name I can't remember. I think they lived in Bradford, and they moved up to Cumbria. Anyway, they did a fantastic version of the Great Valerio. That's probably my favorite. Other versions, I mean, you can't not love Bonnie Raitt's version of Dimmy of the Day. It's such a nice version.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Tom Jones did a cover. How cool is that? That's pretty good. And on the whole, I mean, I've had some great covers. Tear Stained Letter by Patty Loveless. You know, was it?
Oh
Was it?
yeah, yeah, that's right. And in fact, that might have been what you played on the Old Grey Whistle test that very night that we were just talking about. What can I ask? This is a funny question, but I know you'll know the answer if you want to answer it, because songwriters always know this. What is your most successful song? By which I mean financially.
Oh, financially, I've no
Yeah, I
idea.
just mean. Oh, do you know? I feel like I would know that if I were you. I
I'm supposed
don't
to
know
know
why.
that. It's probably what would it be? I mean, it could be Vincent Black Lightning, maybe.
Right.
I mean, if Spotify, paid you properly for every stream, I'd be very rich by now, and we all would. Vincent, Dimmy of the Day, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure.
For Richard, what music are you currently listening to, or what groups excite you with their music or innovation? From Scott Rao.
There's this what are they? Zimbabwean band. There's a band called You Can Dance. UKANDANZ, which is like a four-piece kind of almost like a kind of a African Jethro Tull, and they team up with this.
Hold on. It's an African Jethro Tull.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
But I mean, they're so good. I mean, they're such great players, and they team up with this singer and who sings traditional music, and the combination is really fantastic. You can check them out on YouTube, and you will be you will fall off your chair. It's so wonderful. So I love them. Who else am I listening to? Well, I listen to a lot of kind of classical stuff these days. Songs of Mahler. I love Mahler's songs, just kill me. Ich bin die Welt abhanden gekommen, sung by Janet Baker, is just wonderful.
And the songs of the earth. I'm not good saying it. Oh my God, that is the music to end all music once you've listened to those.
Yeah, it's almost like the time doesn't just stand still; it kind of goes backwards. So when you're listening to some of those Mahler songs,
obviously you've rolled on Vaughan Williams a little bit. Do you think have you ever Mahlered in your music?
Never Mahler, but Mahler's kind of complex. It's quite complicated.
Well, your
music, it's very layered. There's layer upon layer in Mahler. Well, it's just why it's so hard to, I think, conduct, so hard to play. And people say at the time of Mahler, the musicians weren't good enough to play Mahler. That it's taken until probably the 60s and 70s for orchestras to be able to really tackle it with relish and play it well. But it's tricky stuff.
Is there any music? This from Stephen Ellis. Is there any musical artist that you regret never having had a chance to collaborate with? And let's face it, you have collaborated with many, many, many great musical artists. Is there anybody that springs to mind that you might yet or haven't yet had the chance to collaborate with?
Well, there's a few people I haven't, but there's nothing really, eating me that I would say, gosh, this is one person I'd love to play with. Apart from you, Wes, yes. I'm trying to think. I'm mostly dead people, really, and even then, I wouldn't want to jam with them. I'd want to be a fly on the wall.
Yeah, just watch.
Charlie Parker, and Dizzy, playing 1947. See Mozart conducting his own music or something. Just the kind of the premiere of The Rite of Spring. Just to be there and watch the fights in the audience. That kind of stuff, really. But I'm fairly satisfied as to who I've worked with. I've managed to work with most of the people I want to, and I wish some people, like maybe Sandy Denny, was still alive, and we could continue that process a bit longer.
I just passed by a question, but now I'll answer it. I'll ask it, but I can't tell you who asked it. Somebody simply said, "I love Sandy Denny so much. Tell me about her." And of course, your book does tell
Yes.
us about her, but tell us some now.
Well, of course, you have to read the book to get the real. Yes. Okay. Oh, very good. We're holding our copies up to get the real inside info. And I do describe Sandy at some length, I think, in the book.
You do.
You know, she was an extraordinary human being. You know, very sensitive person. Very up and down. Very changeable. You know, musically. But pretty extraordinary, obviously. I can't think of a better singer, you know,
Right.
certainly in the world of folk music. I can't think of anyone who could really compete with Sandy. And a great writer. And I think had she lived a bit longer, I think we would have seen some more wonderful songs from her. And she's also a great pianist. She had a really distinctive way of voicing piano chords. You know, she used a lot of like minor sevenths, unusual for a folkie. And I wonder where she got those from. Maybe from someone like Delius. You know, she kind of found those voicings, and she did unusual chord changes and stuff in her songs as well. I mean, she was very progressive in that way. It wasn't just you know, three chords and the truth. She was really very exploratory in her melodies, and you know, her lyrics were complicated and sometimes obscure. And it's taken me about this long to decode some of them. I just figured out a couple of things last week.
Well, what was the process that led to that decoding?
Well, you know, I'm just you know, there's things that, you know, what is it? Somebody, the sailor. You know, Jackson Frank's in there somewhere, you know, for instance, you know, her old boyfriend, Jackson Frank, is in there in a very cryptic way. You know, her friend Theo is there because Theo had a boat, so he's Theo the sailor. You know, she liked to kind of play games and build puzzles into her lyrics, because I think she didn't want to expose herself. She wanted to be a little bit cryptic about her emotions.
And yet in the book, you're quite, it quite seems slightly regretful about her solo albums, as though they perhaps could have been a little more powerful than they were. Not powerful, but they could have been perhaps more successful than they were if they perhaps been played a little differently or produced a little differently.
Absolutely.
That was the feeling I got.
But no one could really find the solution. I mean, I couldn't, as one of the producers. You know, Chris Blackwell couldn't quite think how to crack it. You know, lots of people thought about it, but Sandy did have this very kind of mid-paced tempo that she wrote almost everything in.
Right.
I mean, it's very hard to get her to write something faster or slower. Well, you know, we wanted Sandy to be as big as, you know, Carole King or something. We wanted her to be, you know, recognized as a truly great singer-songwriter, which she should have been. But it didn't quite happen, and no one could quite figure out what the key was. You know, how to get Sandy to write a different kind of song that will balance out her albums. I mean, people love her albums anyway, but what happened with her albums was that we'd sometimes throw on like an up-tempo song just for contrast. You know, we throw in like a rock and roll song or something. Just, you know, which was you know, kind of gratuitous, and we shouldn't have done it, because it really wasn't part of the true Sandy. And you know, I mean, I kind of gave up in the end. I couldn't really figure out how to do it.
She seems like one of those classic rock, interesting genius characters who was an amazing mix of self-confidence and huge insecurity.
Yeah, absolutely, she was. Yeah, exactly like that. She was insecure about her music, but if you criticized her, I mean, she'd defend herself to the last. You know, it's a strange combination of musical absolute confidence and then no confidence whatsoever. And as a person, she could have no confidence. You know, in her appearance, she had no confidence. She thought she was too short, too fat. But then she got to hang out with kind of tall models, you know, just to kind of emphasize the fact, which didn't really help. Yeah, you know, she was a bundle of contradictions, really. And but above all, I mean, I think of Sandy, you know, just as this, you know, happy, jolly person, which she was some of the time. I like to think of her that way, rather than, you know, the person who kind of slowly self-destructed towards the end of her life.
Yeah, well, you know, and another of my friends is Dave Cousins from the Strawbs, and of course he comes with her from a whole earlier even than that angle, where she was, you know, joined. You know, she met him down at which folk club would it have been? Hounslow, Twickenham? Where would it have been?
More like Twickenham or Richmond, I think. Really.
Yeah, maybe Richmond or Twickenham, and then suddenly they were making a record in Scandinavia, and there was the Strawbs. But you know, then she was in Fairport. I mean, such an amazing rock history, and then so many beautiful stories in the book about Swarbrick, who's obviously Dave Swarbrick, the fiddle player, who's obviously somebody that you know locked antlers with a little bit during the, but who came in and was really the person in a sense who unlocked, no, not unlocked, but helped you with that Legion Leaf world and was instrumental in taking that to a new folk rock place.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so Swarb and Sandy were both really instrumental in moving Fairport forward in that way. You know, first of all, I actually had the kind of the idealism to say this is the way we should be going, and then when Sandy came into the band, then she was already singing traditional songs in her repertoire, so we just kind of played along with her in that way, you know, on a bunch of songs. But then we did a song called A Sailor's Life, which was really kind of revelatory and kind of opened new doors for us. And then we brought Swarb in, and then we had an interesting combination of people who really grew up playing a lot more folk music and people who grew up playing a lot more rock music, and kind of putting that together into a band. And it was a good combination.
And in those, when you started doing those gigs, and after you had made the break with the previous Fairport repertoire, were there any songs that you were still continuing to play regularly during the you weren't at all?
Zero. Yeah, zero. No, it was a clean break. So you know, we didn't play A Sailor's Life, for instance, which would have been interesting.
Yes, quite. That would be the obvious one.
You know, we didn't play Meet on the Ledge, which was our sort of, you know, anthem at that point, you know.
Yeah.
Nothing. We were just, you know, with little regard for the audience, I should say, at that time, because, you know, here we were, we'd go on stage and play the Legion Leaf album, and people who had been fans from '67 were left rather bemused. You know, the songs that they liked had just suddenly disappeared, and there's this whole new thing going on. So we weren't particularly caring about the audience, which is a bit sad.
Well, but on the other hand, you did have yourselves and your own trauma to look after, to look out for at that particular point. Yeah. And I'd never quite realized, I mean, I don't know why, it's so funny that one hears a band's name like Fairport Convention and doesn't think where the convention came from. But of course, back then you were very influenced by American bands. And you say in the book that it was Quicksilver Messenger Service and Jefferson Airplane. And that's where the kind of convention came from.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, Strawberry Alarm Clock, Hapshash and the Coloured Coat. I mean, you know, you had to have a good few syllables to your name, preferably about 7, I think. Fairport Convention, about 6, I suppose, 5 or 6. Yeah, that was just the times. You know, that was just the '60s.
That was kind of a question from Neil Lader. I think we're going to leave it there because we're 6 minutes over time, and I really, as I'll tell the crowd now, I've written the review for the Wall Street Journal. It's coming out tomorrow. It's a very positive review because I really loved the book. It was everything that I could have hoped that it would be. It's really beautifully written, and it moved me very much, lots of it. So thank you very much. And on behalf of the audience here tonight, I'd like to say on behalf of the Philadelphia Free Library, thanks for coming to talk to us this evening about the book, and good luck with it.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Wes. Thank you, audience, for listening. Lovely experience, and we'll see you all somewhere live, I hope.
I hope live in concerts, absolutely.
And I'll see you for a cup of tea somewhere, Wes.
Absolutely. See you in Montreal.
Yeah.
New Jersey, America. ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much to Richard Thompson tonight.
Thank you.